You're listening to the Good Food CFO podcast, where we challenge the status quo of the food industry, celebrate good food founders who are building businesses on their own terms, introduce industry disruptors, and are redefining equitability. If you're ready to build your financial confidence and join the good food revolution to change the way the food industry does business, you are in the right place. I'm the Good Food CFO and your host, Sarah Delavan. Chauniqua Major, affectionately known as Major, is a dynamic creative based in Orlando, Florida. Her unwavering commitment to doing good work powers her to achieve remarkable feats within her community. She is the founder of What's Good, a PR and marketing shop, and she's the chief snack officer of Major's Project Pop, an award-winning popcorn company that ships nationwide. Today on the podcast, Major joins me for a candid conversation around how she is building Project Pop on her own terms. She shares what the early years were like, the value of saying not now, the meaningful moments with her husband and her mentor that helped her envision the future of her business when she realized she could not do it all on her own, and the power of asking, what if? Major's approach to business is a breath of fresh air, and I am so excited for you to hear our conversation. So let's get to it. Hey, Major, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
I'm so excited to chat with you today because I came across you on Instagram, as you do.
Okay.
And I started to just kind of see what you were up to, sort of the ethos of your business. And I thought, this looks like a woman who is building not only a business, but businesses on her own terms. And I just felt this need to get to know you and hear your story.
I love to hear that, because that's actually what I am doing. And it's, you and I talked pre-show about just how things seem to you as an individual and then what it looks like on the outside. And sometimes I do wonder if my intention and what I'm trying to do with everything that I do is expressed externally, or if it's just something that I'm just desiring to have. But that means a lot to hear you say that.
Oh, good. Well, I talked a little bit about your businesses in the intro, but can you tell our listeners a little bit about Project Pop and the other things you're up to?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's best to start with PR because that's how I first started doing everything. So I went to college at the University of Central Florida, and that's in Orlando, Florida. And I graduated thinking that I was going to move right back to New York because I'm from upstate New York.
Okay.
But during that time, the economy was terrible. There was no place to find a job. I did 9 internships in college, and I had every desire to go back to New York and work somewhere at a luxury fashion house. I used to be really big into fashion. So I had all these aspirations. And then when I couldn't find a job, I was like, well, I guess I'll take another internship. So I did one more internship at a local magazine here in town. And that led to me getting a job at a PR agency. It was this really cool work happenstance, or I had to I had to request some photos from a PR agency for the magazine spread. And I was like, oh, PR agency, this looks like a cool place to work. So I sent her an email and I was like, hey, what does it look like to possibly get an interview with you? I interviewed with this woman. I stayed working with her for 6 years. And it was during that time with her that I was actually introduced to the beautiful world of food and all that makes the industry both good and bad. And I fell in love with food, how it's grown, how it's prepared, how it's serviced to people. And it was during that job that I was gifted a popcorn machine. So my love for popcorn really just started to come to life. So PR and popcorn for me are like peanut butter and jelly in my life. They go together very well. And so I started Major's Project Pop while working for that PR firm, continued it as I started working with another PR firm. And then in 2021, I left the agency life started my own PR agency called Whatever's Good PR. So now I have Whatever's Good PR and Majors Project Pop as my two businesses.
I love it. And there's a personal background aside from getting to know what the food industry is like, good and bad, and developing a love for popcorn. There's a little bit of a personal story, it seems like, for how you started to really like make popcorn and serve it to some of your family members. Can you share that?
Yeah. So there was this time in my life where I just didn't know what I wanted to do. I was already in my PR career, but I just felt this itch to like start something, be different, do something. So my entire family, for the most part, has a military background.
Okay.
So I thought, well, I'm definitely going to join the military. I was like this close from getting on a bus, going down to Tampa, and literally like swearing in, and I didn't get on the bus. And the next week, I saw this flyer for this foodpreneur series that was happening at a food hall in town. And it was all about like how to start a food business from scratch. I was like, well, I've been toying around with this popcorn idea because, I mentioned that I got the popcorn machine as a gift. So I was like making popcorn in the office for my staff. I was exploring and just trying to increase and boost morale, with snacks.
Yeah.
But I really fallen in love with making popcorn. So a friend of mine, an old friend of mine, and I thought that we were going to start a business together. We were going to do a juice bar. Then we were going to start a soap company. Then she quit halfway through the program. I ended up finishing it on my own and thought, well, since she's not around, I guess I can do this popcorn company that I've always been thinking about. So I signed up. And while I was in the last part of the course making all these recipes, I didn't know it then. I wish I could say I was that smart, but I'm not. But I just had these thoughts in mind of what do I want to feed my nieces? If I'm going to make something and sell something, I need to be able to eat it, but I also want to be able to serve them something because they call me TT. I'm always that TT that had like yellow grape tomatoes in a bag or like these healthy green snacks that no one wanted to eat. So I thought, let me create something that's approachable for them, but that still has quality ingredients that I wouldn't mind them eating every once in a while. And that was really like the ethos of why I started the business. And it's just continued to grow from there. And then now it's the ethos is still the same. I won't make or sell anything that I would not sell to them or give to them to eat or snack on at my house.
I love that. I love so many people have that like personal story of learning about the industry. I think that just sort of cracks your brain open and you're like, what have I been
Oh
eating all of
yeah.
these years? And where can I find things that you can't normally find in the grocery store? That was huge for me. Like I don't know if
Yeah.
I've ever shared this on the podcast, but way back when I was learning about food, is I struggled with
Hmm.
acne for a long time. And so that was my
Oh yeah.
like food as a medicine and sort of helping to treat that, from the inside out. I remember going to the markets, learning everything I possibly could, and discovering I actually like the taste of tomatoes. I actually like the taste of strawberries. There's more than like two kinds of lettuce. Who knew? And I had this blog that I never published. It just was like behind the scenes only. And it was called Eat It, You'll Like It. And it was just these stories of
Oh,
like,
I love
I thought I
that.
hated that once I got a really good
Oh, you
version
need to
of
bring that
it.
out.
I
I
don't
think
think
that would be great
I
today.
think it, went away, but I was actually thinking about it the other day. I was saying, my goodness, such a funny,
And
but
it's
that
so
was where I did my
true.
research.
Yeah. And that's the thing, sometimes people will ask, like, how do you come up with recipes? And I get inspiration from everywhere, right? I go on Pinterest, I walk down the grocery store aisles. I love the grocery store. I'm in the grocery store probably like 5 or 6 times a week. I actually enjoy it. So, some people hate it and they're like, they'll order it from whatever company
Mhm.
or they'll make that one trip a week. I go there because I like to see what's new. What are people buying? What's in people's carts, and what am I interested in? And one of the big things behind Majors Project Pop is I wanted to create each recipe using very approachable ingredients. So like no preservatives or just anything that would be hard to pronounce or that you just couldn't get at the grocery store. So if someone's interested in buy popcorn and they're like, what is that flavor that I taste? Or that tastes really good. They can look at the back of the bag and go buy everything at the store if
Yeah.
they really want to, right? And incorporate it into their food. Because a lot of times people think to eat better or healthier or vegan products or plant-based that it won't taste good. And that's very far from the truth. I was reading, I'm pretty obsessed with Threads right now. So I was on Threads today and someone posted, you know, she hopped in an Uber and the guy said, "Oh, I don't like vegan food." And she was like, "So you don't like fruit?" And he's like, "Oh, I didn't realize that was vegan." And it's things like that, right? Where like people literally like they're just understanding of food is just very surface level, right?
Yeah.
That makes sense. Like I could imagine if I didn't work in food or if I didn't make food or if I didn't represent like restaurants and chefs, that my deep knowledge would not exist and I wouldn't understand it the way that I do. And I might be a little bit more normal too, right? Where you just kind of eat everything, you don't ask questions. But when you do start having health issues and things like that in your life, it does make you start to take a step back and assess, what am I putting in my body? And at least what am I putting in my body the majority of the time? Because I
Yeah.
do believe we should all have little things that we really like, right? That might not be the best for us every once in a while, but on a day-to-day basis, what we're putting in our bodies literally makes who we are. And I thought, well, if I'm going to make something, I might as well contribute to maybe something a little bit better.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. So you took the course, you've got this idea, you've got an ethos for the type of popcorn and product you want to make. What does the
Yes.
launch of the business look like?
Well, so I was in a room. I was renting a room in a house at the time because I had just moved out of my mom's house in college and I thought I need to get out on my own. So I had this really cool roommate. She worked for Disney at the time. So I was like always getting like these fun ideas from her. And I just remember being in that small room in that house, just crunching away, coming up with all the different ideas that I could. So within like 48 hours, I created a website. I had my colleague at the time, one of our brand designers. She made my labels for me. She helped me create my logo. Like we whipped this thing up like really, really, really fast and have it come to life. All to launch it was like a show day. So everyone that made it through the program, you could showcase your products and have people taste them and get feedback. So at that time, I had 3 different flavors and I brought them all to the event. Of course, the kettle corn flavor was like the most popular. People just loved it. And the business launched from there. But looking back now, it almost feels like, and I try not to discredit like the small beginnings in those days, but it definitely felt like more like a hobby. Like I
Mm,
was like looking back now, it feels like I was gearing up for like where the business is today. So technically we started a long time ago, but in reality, I feel like the business like really started in 2020 and the other years were more so just trial and error and figuring it out and learning to love being committed to something even though it wasn't doing necessarily what I wanted to do at that time.
I love that.
Like I
Yeah.
thought that I was going to be maybe doing this and doing that, but yeah, it just gave me this like long-term commitment with this business. And now, and I felt like I was married to it for so long, and then we had a baby, and then I just had to hold on to it. And now, over the last couple of years, I've just learned so much about the business of food and how to handle things that now I've divorced myself from the business. I understand that the business is not who I am, it's
Mm,
just a part of what I do. And that way I can handle a lot differently. So the reasons why I couldn't scale appropriately or do things like I wanted to is because I was just too much of a control freak. It was my baby, right? So I wanted to
yeah.
control what it wore, where it went, what it ate, all these things. And now it's like, okay, let me let you go. Like I'm still connected to you, but in order for you to grow up and be the brand that I know you can be, I've got to, loosen up the reins a little bit and allow for other input and have more assistance that I would have turned away in the past just because I wanted to hold on to it so tightly. It's just grown so much, and my hope and anticipation is that it will grow tremendously and in different ways that maybe 3 years ago, I never anticipated, but now that my eyes have been open and I've kind of made that separation from like the business is who I am to like the
Yeah.
business is just, it's something that I run and that I operate. I just have so much more freedom now, right? To not
Yeah.
stress about all the things that I would just get so worked up about and get to dream big and allow other people to join me in this journey to make it something that I never thought it could be.
Yeah. Can we dig into that a little bit more? Because I think what you
Yeah.
just shared is so valuable. Starting from in the beginning, just sort of figuring things out and not, you mentioned you maybe had dreams or hopes or desires for it to be something
Yeah.
bigger sooner,
Mm-hmm.
maybe, right?
Mm-hmm.
But sort of, I think there's so much value in being okay with where you are. And sometimes you have to learn that.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of see it way after the fact,
Absolutely.
but recognizing, and I'm saying this sort of to people who are listening, like recognizing that this is new, that maybe you're new to an industry that you've never worked in
Absolutely.
before, certainly never owned a business in before, having grace and patience with yourself as you figure things out, I think is really important. And to figure out if you
Absolutely.
want to spend years in the business and figuring out what is it that you
Yes.
want to build long term.
Absolutely. Yes. And when I made that decision to divorce myself from my business, right, or let my business grow up and move out, whatever analogy you want to use, it all kind of started during the pandemic. So I never really put the pedal to the metal with this brand because I just felt like if I do that and I put my PR skills behind this business, I think it will take off and I can't handle that.
Right.
So I was always very shy about like promoting it. I would have maybe a little brand deal here, something there, maybe a couple of orders. And that was fine for me because I just loved to do it. It wasn't, and even to this day, like, I'm down for whatever happens. Like, I want it to be successful, but some people go into businesses, which I think is totally fine, but with a mission of like, I want to scale to this amount of money. I want to sell. I want to do this. All that is amazing, but that just wasn't the reason for why I created this brand. So
Can I ask you a couple
I'm
of
willing to see where it goes. Yeah,
Yeah, I want to ask you. So when you first started, were you like mixing and bagging, like packaging the popcorn on your own?
yeah,
Yeah. And when
I
you
still
say that
do.
you still do, okay, because
I still
I would
do.
love, I'd love to hear a little bit about what the sort of like letting go or divorcing,
Oh, okay,
consciously
yeah, I can talk about that.
separating maybe
Yeah.
from the popcorn business
Oh
looks like
yeah.
for you.
There's a very
Because
dramatic story.
because and the reason why is because I've worked with and sort of coached a number of founders at this point, over 100 founders. And something that we face a lot of the times is if I let someone else make my product, if I hand
Mhm.
this process off or that process off, then it's not a small business. It's not this thing and it's not attached to me, and people are going to not love it as much, or people are not going to like respond to it in the same way. And we do a lot of coaching around that with people. So I
Yeah.
wonder what things weren't you kind of willing to let go of initially, and then what types of things did you let go of?
Yeah. So I'm still in the letting go of process right now. I had a food friend slash mentor of mine just look me in the eye and was like, "Do you want like thousands of people to taste your popcorn every year, or like tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people?" And I'm
Yeah.
like, I mean, if I can't make it, I guess thousands, you know? And I just remember just trying to do the most to expand to the level that I needed to meet the orders that were coming in, and it just not working. Like I just
Mm,
couldn't get things to taste the same, and it was just so hard. So it just made me just kind of fall back and say, well, I guess I just can't meet that demand.
right.
So I've passed on a ton of business. When I say a ton of business because of my control freak ways, right? And I remember one day coming home from making popcorn, and I was trying again at like a larger like popping capacity. And I remember I just came home and sat down on the couch, and my husband put his hand on my back and he was like, you've got to you've got to be okay with maybe the popcorn tasting a little different, or the idea of maybe someone else popping or something. And I just boohoo cried. I mean,
Yeah.
I cried like snotty face. And I was just like, I can't, like, if it doesn't taste good, I don't want to sell it. Like, I don't want to sell it because I had all these feelings of like feeling like a sellout,
Yeah.
or feeling like if it doesn't taste good, I don't want to just make money. Like, that's not the reason why I do this. Like, it's nice that I make money, but that's not the primary reason why I do this, you know? And he said those words to me, and I just kind of dismissed them, but they were always like ruminating in the back of my head.
Yeah.
And then maybe about a year ago, I got diagnosed with a health issue, and the way that I could normally operate significantly changed. And I realized that I can't do this the way that I used to, you know, popping for hours on end and to my knees are like ready to like buckle. Like, I can't, you can't do this anymore, Major. So it was really me getting that seed planted from him, and then my body telling me, you can't do what you used to do.
Yeah.
It made me realize, like, so then I had the freedom to start to dream, like, okay, so what does this look like? Because at the same time, I started getting like order requests, like, hey, we need 10,000 units the next 30 days and stuff like that. And I'm like, I can't do that. But it started to make me realize, like, if you can find a co-packer or someone or something that has like the same like brand standards that you have, and even if the popcorn, I still have a hard time with this, even if it doesn't taste exactly the same, if it is just as delicious. And I'm trying to change my mindset even much so more so today, that what if somebody can make it better than I could?
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, who's to say that I can make it the best? Like, I don't know, right? So I was going into it so negatively in the past, and now I'm trying to train my brain to say, like, well, what if? Like, what if you can make an even better product? Or I don't know, there's a co-packer that might have a cool idea, or the way that their machine works, it just
Yeah.
gives it this that you don't have right now. So I started to dream and started to dream big, and just started to like bet on myself a little bit. Like, if you've been able to achieve all that you've achieved by yourself, and the opportunities that I've had to pass on, like, if I was ready at that time, we would be like here.
Yeah.
You know, right now we're about like right here, but we would have been here. So now I'm like, okay, Major, I know those things they didn't come to me just for me to pass them by. Those are all still contacts, opportunities that I can always go
Yeah.
back to, knock on the door and say, I'm ready now, right? Because
Yeah.
they'd rather have you when you're ready than when you're not.
Yep.
So a friend of mine tagged me on Facebook to a Goldman Sachs Black in Business program. I applied. I did a lot of like Black in business things during the pandemic because we're just very popular during the pandemic, and a lot of brands wanted to invest in Black businesses and entrepreneurs. So I signed up thinking that like everybody got accepted. When I got there, I realized no, not every brand gets accepted to this program, and it was such a gem. It was a very, very rigorous process, but what I learned in those, I think it was maybe 4 or 5 months during the program, was everything I needed to learn when I first started this business that I just didn't get. Like,
Mm.
I didn't know how to properly like really run a business. Like, I figured things out on my own, but it took you from being like a founder to really being a CEO of your business. And it was that CEO factor that I didn't have. And I wouldn't have been even ready for all that I learned if I didn't have that talk with my husband at the time about, you might need to,
Yeah.
you know, separate yourself from this business a little bit. It was gradual. It wasn't this overnight thing, right? it took a lot of time because it took a long time to build that bond with my business.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't expect it to happen overnight. And it's still there. It's still very much so like, yes, it's
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
But I've also realized that, like, hey, if you want to, like, some of my aspirations are, like, I would love to see our brand on like airlines and at like big arenas and things like that. If that's what you want, you're not making that popcorn major.
Yeah.
You're not.
Yeah.
This is somewhere else, somewhere probably in another state.
Yeah.
I still want to be very much so connected. I want to oversee. I want, of course, I want to have very much so be hands-on in the R&D process, but there are systems and processes built for that level of scale
Yeah.
that you don't have. This is me
Yeah.
talking to myself. And
Yeah.
so if you want to see that, right, and not only be a representative for just yourself that like you could actually do it, but I really want to inspire other people, like people that look like me, my nieces, other entrepreneurs that like you can do this and you don't have to maybe have come from the tech company, sold your company, now you have millions and you can start this like food
Yes.
business like that.
Yes.
Like you can actually build something and maybe make millions, maybe not, maybe
Yeah.
just have a sustainable living, right, where you're proud of what you do, you get to enjoy life, but it's possible. And during the pandemic, all the opportunities that came my way just showed me like, wait, this is actually doable.
Yeah.
It just requires like a sort of it requires a death and transition of what was into what needs to be in order to actually achieve the level of success that I want the business to have.
Yeah. So many gems of wisdom in what you shared just now, because, and I want to kind of touch on a couple of them because I'd love to do that. One is sort of the idea of what is possible. I think we assume sometimes like the pre-boohoo snotty crying, right? You were like,
Yes.
only I can do this. I make it the
Yeah.
best, right? All of these things, it's very precious. And I get that. Like I was there when I was a food business owner too. You literally are making something that no one else is making. You are making a version of popcorn that is different. And the idea of it being anything other than that is scary. Being less than is scary. Going to a co-packer and having them use something in your product that you can't pronounce, that isn't something you would buy, like all of those things are scary. But what I heard you describe was that you thought about the vision of the business. Do you want to sell to 1,000 people? Do you want to, do you want 1,000 people to taste your popcorn or like
Mm-hmm.
100,000 people? And this idea
Yeah.
of, well, wait, what do I want? And pausing to have a vision for your business, because a lot of people start and they're like, I'm just doing this because I love to create this product, because my friends and family love this product. But as they keep going, I think without vision and like an end goal, you kind of don't know what to say yes to,
Yeah.
what to say no to, what to let go of, what to hang on to. And so I think that it's a crucial part and your vision can change, but without it,
Absolutely.
I think it's hard to kind of navigate and actually move your business forward. The other thing that I kind of heard you say too, that I want to touch on, is this idea of like, your business doesn't have to be tiny to achieve the mission that you want it to achieve. And I think that there's like, you could be a multi-million dollar brand and still do all the good and more that you intended when you
Mm-hmm.
launched the business. And I think something that
Absolutely.
permeates in the industry, the good food space in particular, where we're trying to source sustainably, we're trying to pay people a fair wage, we're trying to, I know one of your, taglines and ethos is people over profits, right? But
Yeah.
we can do all of those things and be big. We could be a
Yeah.
corporation, right? And
Mm-hmm.
still do good. I think the idea of what is a corporation versus what is a small business is changing, because quite frankly, women and women of color are creating the change, which is really exciting. And I just think that's an important thing for people to hear. I said, if you want to be
Yeah.
tiny, stay tiny. But if you want
Mhm.
to blow it out, go for it. Do it. Be the
Absolutely.
person who does
Just
it.
figure out like for me, ingredients, that's like top of the list for me. So I got connected with a consultant who's helping me, get connected to some co-packers and things just to kind of explore like
Yeah.
what will this look like, right?
Yeah.
Because I know I'm picky. I'm picky. Like I'm picky
As you
about
should be.
everything. I'm definitely picky about my brand.
Yeah.
So I've like made my like master list of like ingredients that I am open to having in my product, and it's expanded from what I have now, but not into preservatives and things like that, just
Yeah.
other ingredients. Like I would love maybe a curry or a dill or something, what does that look like where it can still be clean, minimal ingredients, things like that. But it's with the idea that I still want the brand to feel similar to what it is now. I just
Hmm.
want it to be grown up.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like right now we're like a little teenager. Like I get to kind of play and do and pick and choose where I want to go, but I want to, mature the brand a bit so that it can be further than what my hands can do. But the moment that like I have to maybe make some changes that I feel like just change the brand from what I believe it should stand for, I just won't do it,
Yeah.
you know? And for
Yeah.
me, that's okay. But I see a lot of brands, they make those changes because they feel like that's what they have to do. But I always question, like, why?
Yeah.
Is it because of decisions that you've made, investors that you have involved? Like, what led to you having to make changes that maybe were foundational for you?
Hmm.
At the beginning. And for me,
Yeah.
I don't want to let go of the foundational things. Like, if I have to do that, I can start another business and not have it won't have anything to do with food, so that I don't have to make those amendments, because I just have such a for me, a lot of this stuff is like at the core of who I am. Like, I don't do this just because, oh, it's cool to have a food business. Like, this is hard.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't choose this, right?
Yeah.
There's other things I do that I make a lot more money sometimes and a lot less time and a lot less labor, but I actually really love this. And I love the way people engage with the food and how excited people are when they taste our popcorn, and the conversations we get to have, the conversations you get to have over food, right? It's like
Hmm.
nothing else you get to do that with besides, you know, a good plate of food, a good glass of wine. Like, you don't get to have those like moments of connections with people. And I wouldn't trade it for the world, but I definitely won't. I won't trade my mission and how I got this thing started just to be somewhere or to have a
Yeah.
more shelf stable product. Like, we'll just have to figure it out, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. I mean,
So
it's the definition of building a business on your own terms. Like you've identified what you want to build, you identified what your non-negotiables are, right? Like this brand will
absolutely.
end before I give up, and put things in
Yeah.
my popcorn or source my popcorn maybe from a place that I otherwise wouldn't. I also too think that, saying, it sounds like maybe you don't have the type of investors that, and I don't know if you have any investors at all, but you don't have anybody saying, we need you to hit this particular profit margin and you're going to do it
No,
this way. Right. Like, so saying like, that
no.
ain't for me is also
Yeah. And for
doing things
some
on your own
people, it's
terms.
cool.
Yeah.
Like, if that's what they want, that's fine. Like, I don't, I do, but I try not to hate on the way people do business. But if that's the way they choose to, then
Yeah.
that's totally fine, right? Like, all have, we all have to do what we have to do.
Yeah.
Um, but for me, it's like, I don't know. I think about, like, for me, it's food. Like, I'm selling something to someone, they're putting in their bodies. Like, I
Yeah.
just, there's a lot of brands out there that just give us that good junk food that we love, right?
Hmm.
And from time to time, I feel like there's a lot of them out there. There aren't enough people trying to offer something a bit cleaner. And that's like the race that I want to get into. And I would love to find ways to be even more clean and find other ingredients that I can offer to
Yeah.
people. And that's just the space that's the lane that works for me. I don't want to get out of my lane, right?
Yeah.
I want to stay right
Yeah.
there. Um,
I have a saying that like we say internally, it's like us and someone else, whoever, you know, maybe someone compares me to or another company sort of in the,
yeah,
you know, food coaching space or something. It's like we're not in the same race. Don't compare me
no,
and what we're doing to anybody else. Like our finish line and their finish line are not the same. We're doing our own
absolutely.
thing, right? And I think that that's a great thing to have as a food business owner too. It's like I'm not trying to be a Dorito, right? Like I'm, or you know,
No,
whatever else. Like I'm doing my own thing. I'm in my own lane, in my own race, which I think is really exciting.
absolutely. And that's a safe place for me. You know, I can gain inspiration, but like I remember I found this brand, was obsessed. I won't say what the brand publicly because it's very popular. And I was just like, how in the world did she grow this business so fast? Like she's everywhere. And I've, you know, we're connected on LinkedIn. I was so inspired. She got this huge like business deal that happened. And like I mentioned a little earlier in the show where I was like, well, let me just Google and see. And it was like, oh, she was in a whole other industry before, like millions of dollars. Like, oh, this is how this happens for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and not to say that it happens like that for everyone, but it just reminded me that like, oh, okay, her story is very different than yours. Like, this makes sense why she is where she is so quickly.
Yeah.
That's not your story, Major. You didn't have a business that you 10x'd and then sold, and then now you can launch this because you have the resources and can make the phone call and buy the space. And, you know, like it
Yep.
just, everybody's story is a little different. And thankfully, I do not have the mentality that I should be somewhere that I'm not right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm realizing this like as we talk right now at this moment because typically I mean in life I am like very much so a go-getter, very ambitious in a lot of ways, trying to calm down these days a little
Yeah.
bit. Yeah, like there are a lot of things that could have happened, but as I look back now, I'm like, if you would have took that, you probably would have failed. And you
Mm.
would have failed miserably, and it probably would have like ruined your business. So you those opportunities and things like that, like again, now I'm just like, when I'm ready, I'll go back to it.
Yep.
Like
Yeah.
maybe I'll be one of those how I built this people where it took 30 years
30
find
years for an overnight success, right? Like one of those.
overnight
Seriously.
success, right? Like if
Yeah.
it's worth it, then you'll stick with it. And I've just realized that everything happens at the time that it needs to. And if it didn't happen at the time it needed to, if I'm blessed enough, it'll come back around and I'll
Yeah.
be able to capitalize on it at the moment.
So
Yeah.
you're selling your popcorn direct to consumer on your website. And
Yeah.
it sounds like you're
Hmm.
also doing some sort of, I don't know if it's maybe wholesale or corporate. Can you talk about the channels that you're selling your popcorn through?
Yeah. Yeah. So I sell on my website. I also have a local pickup at a boutique shop in town here in Orlando. And then, yeah, I do a lot of like bulk orders and sales to just a lot of large corporations. That's mainly like where the majority of like our income comes from like the Pixars and Netflix of the world. Hey, we have this film coming up, or we have this event, or we're hosting something at this place or that
Yeah.
place. We need popcorn. That's typically where the majority of our sales come from, and that's more of the direction I'm trying to lean into as I go to this like 2.0 of the business.
Yeah.
It's just really assessing. Like, of course, I'll always sell to consumers, but I think that there is just a need, especially as someone who I also have a job and work for a company, so I travel a lot as well.
Mm.
And I find myself in so many places with nothing to eat because no one thinks about the plant-based person or the person that can't have this or can't have that. I think that there is such a need for plant-based snacks that are really good that anyone can eat, but
Yeah.
that are made specifically for certain people to enjoy.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to lean into that more as I think about like, okay, what's our next flavor? Or when we start working with this co-packer, what ways can we switch up our popcorn, or what is the next snack that we're going to have that maybe is grain free or things like that? Because as my body has changed, there have been seasons where I can't eat certain things. And I'm like, oh, so what would happen during that time? Like, what would I eat?
Right.
So I'm thankful that even just my own like demise of my health at some point has inspired me, right, to think and take a step back. Because when you don't walk in someone's shoes, it doesn't make sense. You're like, oh, people can't eat whatever.
Yeah.
And then when you learn, you're like, wow, okay, there's a whole demographic of people out there. And I've realized that people with food allergies and sensitivities, it is not going to stop anytime soon. It's just going to increase day by day, by day, by day, by
Yeah.
day. So if I can create products intentionally with them in mind, for me, it'll just be all the more fulfilling because it's not just a snack for somebody. That might be the only thing they can have on a 4 hour flight, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that sucks, right? To
Yeah.
be somewhere and not be able to eat something. So I'm trying to think about in this next phase, what does it look like to cater to those people who, like myself sometimes or all the time, can't have a lot of things. And you never know, you're going to get caught somewhere for longer than usual. And my snack might just be one of two that they can enjoy at that
Yeah.
time.
That emergency snack you keep on you always. I live in LA.
Absolutely.
You got to have like that emergency car snack. And when you don't, it is brutal.
Oh, I'm
I'm that
sure you
person
do.
whose blood sugar just suddenly just like plummet. And it's like, I'll break out in like
Ah,
a sweat. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I know
sweat
I have to keep things in the glove box that I can just
things
like pull out and
around.
eat
Yeah,
for sure. For sure.
absolutely.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
know that, like I said before, one of your ethos for the company is people over profits, and you sell multiple
Yeah.
flavors of popcorn. But from what I saw on the
Mhm.
website, there's at least one flavor in particular where you donate proceeds. Can you talk
Yeah.
a little bit about that?
Yeah. So we actually donate proceeds from all the flavors. It's just that one in particular, it just made sense at the time to communicate a bit more
Mm,
because I created that. It's actually our OG kettle corn. It's just the packaging is different. I made it during the pandemic when social injustice was just on the rise and much more publicized than it ever had been before. I wanted to create a product that just brought more awareness to the fact that Black lives should be celebrated. You
yeah.
know, typically in the news, there's normally a lot of bad things that are happening, and faces like mine are oftentimes can be associated with negativity. And I just wanted to bring more awareness to that bag that, you know, we should be celebrated and not just talked about when things are going bad, but celebrated all the time for the great contributions that we continue to make to society, to the food industry, to whatever industry that you're talking about. So a portion of proceeds go to different charities, and I typically switch it up every month. Like if I find one online that I really like, I'll donate to them from the proceeds that come from that particular bag. But at any given time, I'm normally picking like a different food nonprofit or charity, or I'm really big into like community development and making sure that people have access to like quality, fair housing and access to great jobs and all these things that we
Yeah.
need to survive in our neighborhoods. So I like to also give back to nonprofits that focus on that particular thing because more than anything, right, we all need a great place to work, great place to live, great
Yeah.
schools, access to healthy food that's not 5 miles away and you don't have a
Yeah.
car. Like these
Mm-hmm.
are things that really happen with people on an everyday basis. So when I think about how proceeds that come into the business can help support or further those causes, it just gives me even more fuel to give back to those who are making a difference at like the neighborhood local level,
Yeah.
because that's where change, you know, needs to happen most.
I agree. It's so great. I know, a lot of founders in the good food space, people who believe in
Yeah.
the value of clean food and real food for people, often come to their businesses with a desire to donate, a portion of their proceeds to either a charity or a couple charities. And sometimes from the CFO seat, I get a little nervous just because I'm like, you got to make sure that you have money, right? Like, don't give away money that you don't
Oh yes.
have,
Don't have.
So do you
Yes.
have any like tips for anybody or like tips on sort of like, protecting yourself while also giving?
I would say be flexible, right? As we know with business, it can be like this sometimes, right?
Mhm.
So don't make promises you can't keep. So don't tell people 20% of so and so, like it's just a portion.
Yeah.
So whatever portion you can afford at that time, make the commitment. Sometimes it doesn't have to be every month. Maybe you can make those contributions on a quarterly basis. Once you look back and like, oh, okay, we didn't do great this quarter. How much can we give? Let's be a little intentional about that. Maybe let's wait until next quarter. Let's see what happens. So for me, I'm very flexible with myself because I understand that I don't like to do things just because I have to. I like to
Mhm.
do things because I know it's the right thing to do, and it's because I have a desire to. And sometimes when you do things because you have to, you put more pressure on yourself than what you need to.
Yeah.
I like to keep my word. So if I tell people that I actually am going to give, I am going to give, and that's my word is my bond. So I'm never gonna separate from that. Yeah, I always tell people, especially when you get started, don't get too public and too loud about like when you buy like Tom's, like when you buy a bag of popcorn is going to this, it's like
Yeah.
you, you've got to make some money first before you try to give it away,
Yeah.
simply because it's just hard to make money in food, in general,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So being patient and then finding other ways to give back as well, right? So it doesn't always have to be monetary. Can you volunteer your time? Can you lend your voice? Could you mentor somebody else who is also trying to get into the space? Could you I don't know. I've had this desire to like start these like little micro business scholarships that I want to give
Mhm.
away to other small business owners who are just getting started. And when I say micro, I mean micro. Like I want to give you $300 so you can pay for your first year of your website hosting. Like
Yeah.
things
Yeah.
like that, where it is very that to me that I know that that's very impactful, right? So it's not always about the dollar amount; it's also about the impact.
Yeah.
And sometimes just lending your voice and your expertise to a company or doing that volunteer day, just making yourself available to someone who is getting started. And that all depends on what industry
Yeah.
you want to give back to. But for me, I'm always just thinking about impact. What ways that I can I be impactful? And we all know that money is great, but sometimes it doesn't fix the things that people need. Sometimes people just need advice that will take them from one step to the next that money couldn't have gotten them because they probably couldn't afford it anyway,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So just
Yeah.
thinking a little bit more holistically about your impact
I love that. I
is a
think those
great
are
way to do it.
all, yeah, I think those are all really excellent tips, Again, as the CFO, I like make sure we're taking care of home first, right? Like take care
Yes,
of you and
yes,
your business and make sure you're getting paid, before you pay someone
absolutely.
else. And the idea of, you know, we love to follow profit first as a company, and we encourage some of the founders that we work with to do that too. And when you tuck away a particular percentage of your gross profit every month, it creates a little pool that then you can draw from, right, to
Yeah,
make donations and to provide a financial
absolutely.
you know donation or support to an organization or to an individual. And if no money is going there, then it means you don't have that money to give. But I love
Money.
that you shared it's not just about the money. I mean, for me,
No.
Friday morning coffee, like virtual coffee, is one way that I try to give back to the food business community, right? It's like my Fridays are booked because I will
Mm,
spend anywhere from 1 to 3 hours talking to people, whether it's someone who is, transitioning to being a consultant in the food industry, or someone who's like, I'm thinking about starting a food business. What should I know? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
that's important to have those conversations. And it's also like very energizing, I think, both ways, right? Just
Oh,
feels so good.
absolutely. Yes. All those conversations, like even this, like for me, I'm like, okay, I can really do this still.
Yes.
you know, it just reminds you of like, when you have those conversations, a lot of times people do take you back to your beginning days and allow you to see how far you've come. And sometimes when
Mhm.
we're in the business, everything does become about like productivity and hitting the numbers and this and that. And having these conversations or volunteering your time or voice, it does allow you to kind of step back and assess, like, how did I
Yeah.
get here? Like, oh, we actually did this. This is cool. And I can give back in so many other ways other than finances. I have to remind myself of that sometimes too, because, sometimes when I'm filling out like grant forms or like, how are you giving back to your community? And I'm like,
Yeah.
how am I giving back to my community? And then I really think like, oh, I have to, and then I write in there, like, it's not always about the financial contributions, because I'm sure if I talk to you for an hour, and or I don't know, whatever amount of time, whatever your billable hour is, if you didn't charge me for that, that is such a gift and contribution from you to me. And if I couldn't afford it, money is not a part of the equation. Like,
Yeah.
the value of what you share with me just skyrocketed, right? So I try to remind people, and even friends who aren't business owners, just to think about like, hey, when you think about giving back or being more involved in your community, it's not always about how much money you gave at the end of the year. What impact did you make? Like, a simple conversation can literally save someone's life. It can
Yeah.
save their business. It can stop them from making a stupid decision. And
Yeah.
while money is great, it's not everything.
Yeah. Being there, being available
Mm-hmm.
is big and
Yeah.
important. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've got some exciting things that you're working on mentally, continuing to let
Yes,
go of your
mentally.
business
Yes.
and sort of expanding the reach of your brand. Anything else you want to share about what you're up to or what you're hopeful for the future?
Hmm. I am really just in this place of going from taking all that I've imagined into actualizing it with help.
Mm,
Like, I'm finally at a place now in my business where I'm now ready to invest and allow somebody to step into this thing with me and really be a part of it with me. And it is very scary. Like, I'm 2 months behind where I should be right now, just because I'm like, are we really about to do this? Like, okay, all right, this is really about to be the thing, like how we move forward. But I'm
yeah.
really excited about that. So yeah, really getting out of just imagining and dreaming into doing, and getting into that hard work, because I know it's going to be hard work, which is a part of why I haven't like stepped into it yet. Because I'm like, all right, I've got to like clear up some space on my schedule, because I know once I get into this, I'm going to be traveling a bit more, going to visit this co-packer, that co-packer,
Mm,
meeting with this person, doing a lot of like R&D. My mental capacity and space just needs to be a lot more free to dive into that space. Because right now, all my other recipes, they're
yeah.
here, they're written down. I know them. Like, I don't have to think. But when you start trying new things, it is a muscle that has to be grown. And I think I'm stretching right now, getting ready for that. Uh, I'm stretching, getting ready for my next season of the business. But that I think I could share publicly. I'm really I'm really just excited about learning more from the people that I currently serve. Like, I haven't asked for as much feedback in the past,
Mm,
but now I'm leaning more into that, because I want to hear from people about what they really want or desire from us. Like, I've had people over the years say, "Do you have anything without sugar?" I'm like, no, not yet. But I'm leaning into that now, because I will have the capacity to create something that doesn't
mm,
have sugar in it. And I want to find out and not be afraid to hear where people want to see us. I mean, I've got dozens and dozens of emails from shops all over the country like, hey, we want to carry your popcorn. I would just file them away for years. I'm
right.
ready to like uncover that again and say like, oh, okay, what what was that
Yeah.
about? And I
Yeah.
want people to tell me. Like, a lot of my audience is in on the West Coast. A lot of people from LA and California and Wyoming and all these people order my popcorn from the West Side, and I want to find out like, where do they want us? Because before, that might scare me, because I just felt like this is something I cannot provide to people.
Hmm.
So I never wanted to lean into it as much. But now I'm like open to that feedback. Like, I want to hear from people, because I feel like now I'm entering into a space where it's not going to happen overnight, but the moves that I make moving forward will be trying to meet those goals. and the needs of people that want to have our popcorn. So I
Yeah.
think people can expect me inquiring more, asking more questions, listening, and maybe being, I feel like I'm in a little bit of like a silent season, a little bit with the brand too, in like some ways where I normally would be like producing a ton of content and doing these things. Like I'm trying to take a step back so that when I pop out again, it's like,
Yeah.
whoa, okay, something's different. Wait, they're
Yeah.
where? Wow, I'm only one person with the help of another, so it's not like I can't do and be all things to everybody while making progress at the same time. I would just say, yeah, people, I would hope if I hold myself accountable that they can just anticipate some new things coming out in the way that we do business. And
Yeah.
I'm excited about it.
Well, for anyone who's not looking at the video, I'm smiling from ear to ear because I think that Major, you're like a breath of fresh air. There are so many founders who, just feel like I've got to do this. I've got to do that. The next step is this. Go, 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 go. That there's a one way to build a business and it's fast, and say yes to
Mhm.
every inquiry, because if we say no, it's just gonna, die overnight. And none of those things are true. And it's such a fearful place to exist and to build a business from. And I think everything that you've shared today is just really inspiring and is a different approach to building a business. And that's exactly the kind of stories we want to share here. So I'm just so, so appreciative of you joining me here and sharing your journey and your
Yeah,
story and how you are approaching business. It's awesome.
I really appreciate it. It's hard, especially like as I mentioned, I'm an ambitious person. So I have that go, go, go in me, but there's nothing like your body telling you slow down, right? And that you can't fight.
Yeah.
So I always tell people you should make the decision to slow down before outside or external factors make you slow down. Like
Yeah.
that's not what you want, because then you feel like you don't have the control. But now it's like I don't have to look back. I don't look back and see regret from things that I've said no to, or we're not ready yet. And there's a lot of that. I can look at all that now as like, hello, opportunity.
Yeah.
Like when I'm ready, I'm going back for everything. Okay.
Yeah. I love
Every
it.
email, every shop, every 10,000 bag order, every,
Yep.
whatever it was. I want to find out where they are, what they're doing, what they need. Like all I need is to be ready. If I'm not ready, it just brings more stress and heartache. And I've only got one body and one life. And as much as I love my business, like the business can't break me.
Yeah.
I can let it break me, but I'm choosing not to do that. And sometimes those no's are hard, but it's worth it now that I feel much more empowered and excited about what is to come, because it's definitely nothing that I would have envisioned even 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's pretty cool for me.
That's so cool. Well, as you mentioned earlier, you're a big fan of Threads. We are recording this, 2 days after
Yes.
Threads launched. And
Yes.
it's so funny because, on Instagram, your feed is very like the algorithm controls the feed. And so you don't see
Yes.
everybody all of the time. And now I feel like this is like the OG kind of version of social media where like
Oh
I
yeah, I'm
see
loving it.
everybody on the feed, and I've been seeing you there, and I've been loving a lot of content. So where can our listeners and other food founders and fans of good food
Yeah.
find you and interact with you?
Yeah. So of course, head over to our website, eatprojectpop.com. And then we are Eat Project Pop. We're mainly on Instagram. You can like us on Facebook. We're on TikTok sometimes, but I'm on Threads. We're on Threads. So Eat Project Pop, and definitely on Instagram, Eat Project Pop.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here, Major. I've had an amazing time.
Thank you. Likewise. It was such a pleasure and honor to be here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Likewise. For more content and connection with good food founders and industry experts, join us inside the Good Food CFO community. Visit thegoodfoodcfo.com/join to learn more. Thank you, as always, for spending time with us here today. If you enjoyed this episode or found it helpful or inspiring in any way, please share your thoughts with your founder friends and on social, and rate and review the podcast wherever you listen. That's the number one way to help more good food founders find the show. I'll be back with a brand new episode in 2 weeks.